Okay, well, confession, I did not recycle the lanyard from last year's TIAC Congress, and I came across it recently, and I thought I'd wear it for old time's sake. And the TIAC lanyard police probably want their lanyard back, so I'm going to recycle it at the end of this Congress. Promise. Quelques rappels rapides. Les séances seront offertes dans la langue de choix des conférenciers, mais vous pouvez profiter du sous-titrage en français dans les sessions sur la scène principale. All Tourism Congress sessions are being recorded and made available to TIAC members through the TIAC member portal later next week. Yesterday, many of you used the chat feature at the bottom right of your screen, and we had some great conversations, so let's keep that up. And now, on with the show. Et maintenant, place à l'événement. Parlons des effets dévastateurs de la pandémie sur le secteur canadien du tourisme. Comme chacun le sait dans notre industrie, la COVID-19 a entraîné pratiquement du jour au lendemain la fermeture de toute l'économie du tourisme, et je pense que cela ne tombera jamais dans l'oubli. Et nous voici, 9 mois après le début de la nouvelle normalité, il est temps de se préparer à prendre la voie de la relance. Let's talk about how the coronavirus pandemic devastated the Canadian tourism sector. As everyone in our industry knows, COVID-19 virtually closed the entire visitor economy overnight, and I don't think we'll ever forget it. Here we are 9 months into the new normal, and it's time to prepare for the road to recovery. In today's keynote session, Caroline Kremen, president of Skift, will unveil trends that will define the future of the visitor economy and offers insight into the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. It's my pleasure to present our keynote session, Recovery Roadmap, Tourism Trends for 2021, sponsored by 2031 Consulting.
Thank you, Catherine. I'm happy to be here at the TIAC Congress this morning. And while I really wish I could be there in person, I'm thrilled to be here virtually. I just want to preface this conversation with the fact that I'm doing this from my home in New York City. So we may hear an occasional siren go on, but what can I say? I'm going to bring you it in real life. Before we get started, I want to say thank you to both TIAC and to the team at 2031, who's the sponsor of this session. So this has been an unprecedented year. It's been wildly challenging for our industry and something that no one could ever have predicted. At Skift, what we do is we connect the dots in the global industry. We decipher and we define the trends, and we share them with you through our daily reporting, through our weekly research reports, and the many events and marketing services. Since the onset of the pandemic, our reporters and analysts have conducted thousands of interviews, produced hundreds of articles, dozens of research reports, and hosted many virtual events. We've been listening very, very closely to what the executives in our industry are talking about, and we're working hard to bring very clear, very useful insights to our readers at Skift. And all of this work culminated into our recent Skift Global Forum, which is our annual thought leadership conference, which took place virtually a few weeks ago. Regardless of the challenges that we've seen over the past months, what came out of the Global Forum this year gave us a better understanding of the reality, and it gave us hope for the future. Listen, we still have obstacles to face, but the optimistic outlook and the overall resiliency of this industry in the face of great adversity is indeed inspiring. So what I want to do over the next few minutes is to share some of that inspiration with you and some of the key takeaways from the Skift Global Forum. So the best place to start is with the biggest question that everyone in travel wants to know: how soon will the industry start to recover, right? When is this going to end? And the great benchmark to figure that out is the interviews that took place at our annual forum in September, where we heard from over 60 plus travel executives from across the sector of the industry. And what the vast majority told us is that we can plan for a 2-year recovery cycle. Now, sure, there's definitely going to be exceptions to that timeline, right? There's going to be certain regions and countries all over the world, and also certain sectors that will recover more quickly or more slowly, right? So look at Asia, look at New Zealand, look at sectors like outdoors and leisure travel, right? So more or less overall 2 years, with some happening a little bit sooner. But as we look ahead to 2021, many travel industry executives are predicting a potentially difficult year, right? We still have international borders that are going to remain closed, and the timing of the potential vaccine and getting it distributed is still uncertain, although we do hear that there is some good news on the horizon. But from that point, everyone sees a good recovery. It's not that V shape that experts talk about, but faster than many of us might expect. And the reason for that is because our scientific understanding of how the virus spreads, also with consumer sentiment, which is evolving rapidly, human behavior is adapting faster than what we would have expected when the worst of the outbreaks were happening in the spring. We think that many travelers are learning to live with the virus and make strategic decisions about what kind of travel activities are safe, right? Outdoors, right? That's a great example. And I know Canada has seen an increase in many territories with outdoor travel and activities. We believe the silver lining is likely to be a reset in terms of how various governments and travel companies from around the world adjust their strategies for dealing with this virus. And that's something that is going to position our industry for great success moving forward. So for example, let's take sustainability. There are a lot of positive signs that we're seeing around the subject of sustainability, which is super exciting. Travel leaders are seeing this as a moment to embrace sustainability and to move away from mass tourism. I mean, Skift has been talking about over-tourism for the past 5 years, but this has been a significant talking point for a long time, but we're seeing real signs now where travel leaders understand the excess of the pre-COVID era and they want to implement long-term solutions. Based on current information, we believe some of the changes that we've seen to mass tourism will be permanent. So how do travel executives change business models and strategy now to adapt to these changes and support the planet at the same time? These are really important questions that many leaders in our industry are considering now in ways that they never have before. They're seeing this as an opportunity to move away from that volume-driven model of tourism to maximize quality over quantity with small-scale, high-value customers, and listen, ultimately, less impact on the environment. Like take, for example, Bhutan, right? Bhutan charges every foreign visitor $250 per day, which includes a $65 sustainable development fee, right? So think about that. A week of travel for 2 people to go to Bhutan is going to cost you $3,500 right off the bat, right? But this is how they're controlling their environment or the impact on their environment. On the other side of the world, look at the Caribbean, right? This is a destination that has been struggling from the prolonged absence of cruise lines. But we know there's likely no going back to big multiple ships anytime soon. The silver lining here is that with no months of cruise tourism, the islands have started to detox. In a recent interview, Director of Tourism for St. Martin, one of the top grossing cruise destinations in the Caribbean, said, we've been going and going and going, and all of a sudden you stop and notice, wow, my destination is looking greener, it's looking cleaner, it's looking better. So how can we make sure that when we do open up, we do it in a safer and better way? Last week, Skift's reporter, Lily Girma, reported on an unprecedented citizen-led push against mass cruise tourism in Key West during a time of under-tourism. Key West voters boldly chose to protect the environment and public health, preventing more than 1,500 passengers from disembarking per day, banning ships with a capacity of 1,300 people or more, And they're giving docking priority to cruise lines with the best environmental and health records, right? This is sparking hope for change, and it's giving residences a rare chance to see nature bounce back, especially in the surrounding marine sanctuary. So tourism leaders all over the world, they see this as a huge moment to preserve wildlife and pristine beaches, local landmarks, and to also support local businesses in a deeper and more positive way. So what's for sure is that the reset conversation is no longer just talk. Moving on, we've all personally experienced the many ways the virus has impacted our lives, not only in terms of how we live, but also in terms about how we think about risk and most importantly, about how many of us work right now. But one area that's undervalued is how the virus has changed business culture in the travel industry. All right, think about this. It used to take dozens of consultants and teams of software developers 6 months to build and launch what is now happening in a fraction of that time. We actually had the #2 executive from MGM Resorts speak at the 2020 Skift Global Forum this year. And he told us about the company's rapid adoption of contactless technology. In the past, their company did not have hardly any kind of contactless system for guests other than a couple of kiosks in the lobby of their hotels. And now in 2020, within a few weeks of making the decision, they were able to deploy a new mobile check-in experience for all their guests, something that in any other year would have taken them months or years to build. So let's take a listen to Atif Rafiq from MGM.
In some cases, we've accelerated roadmaps by 6 to 9 months. Contactless check-in was ready to go for guests when we reopened on June 4th after 2 months of closure, and it hasn't stopped there. We've seen adoption of 30% from day one for that. Now everything you do from getting to your room to how you get food and even enjoy the pool is undergoing change in a positive way, driven by digitization.
At Skift, we think that this move fast mentality that's been created by the pandemic, you may even call it a startup mindset of being able to do more with less, is something that a lot of travel executives will take with them even after the pandemic is over. And that's likely to have a big impact in many areas, not only in terms of new products and services, but also on hiring decisions and the overall size of our industry moving ahead. So connected to that is also the adoption of contactless tech, right? So there's a major shift happening towards technology solutions across the board. Now more than ever, travel businesses are accelerating the use of technology to streamline their operations, to better serve guests and enable safe customer interactions. So this has already been happening in the airlines, but we're really starting to see the hotels and the short-term rental market catch up. And the area that they're most focused on, for good reason, is contactless tech. There are things like contactless payment, self-service check-in, messaging services, right, to handle guest requests, and keyless entry. I mean, keyless entry, right? Think about that. Big chains were already converting to keyless, but consumers were just really not using it. So now this accelerated adoption of these solutions is in some part because of what Arne Sorensen, the CEO of Marriott, calls hygiene theater. Hygiene theater. It's the idea of signaling visitors that you're now entering in a place where there are protocols in place to protect you and others in the environment, and also acknowledging that you care how they feel. So let's go hear what Arne had to say from the stage of Skift Global Forum.
If you look at what CDC has advised all of us to do in our industry and across society, one of the things is temperature checks. Temperature checks is a very dubious tool for identifying who has the virus. We know that there are many who are asymptomatic. and the temperature check's not going to tell us anything. Nevertheless, that temperature check is a visible reminder. It's hygiene theater, if you will. It is a way of communicating to folks, we care about what you feel, and we want you to stop and think about whether or not you, in fact, have any symptoms. And we also want to communicate to you that you're now entering a place in which we've got protocols in place which are here to protect you and to protect others that are in the environment. And you put all these things together, and somebody has explained this like Swiss cheese. If you've got one slice of Swiss cheese, you're going to have holes in it and you can get through it. But if you've got 4 or 5 slices of Swiss cheese stacked next to each other, well, whatever gets through from temperature is going to be blocked from mask, or whatever gets through from mask is going to be blocked from social distancing. Whatever is going to be blocked from social distancing is going to be, or gets through from social distancing is going to be blocked from cleaning protocols. And so you put all those things together, and it makes a substantive difference in safety. We have provably reduced the risk of spreading the virus. And second, we have collectively engaged in a theater that tells us all, reminds us all, be careful. And by being careful, we further reduce the real risk associated with it.
Be careful, wear masks. That's my PSA for today. And I love the Swiss cheese analogy, right? But listen, it's not just because of the safety and hygiene. This move to technology also includes the need to stay competitive, right? So if you're a hotel, you need to be talking about these things. In addition to RNA, I would say that almost every hospitality executive at the Skip Global Forum talked about these kinds of innovations, how they're adding technology and contactless tech and all of that to their stack. And we know that this is going to become even more prevalent in the months and years to come. Okay, let's move on to Modern Family. This is a huge opportunity, and one area where we feel like we are, the industry is missing a bit. Leisure travel has been 2020's savior, but the industry needs to improve its understanding of the modern family and expand options for this important group of travelers in the time of COVID-19. To date, accommodations for families have been largely fulfilled by short-term rentals and private villas and residences. For the month of September, private residences accounted for 27% of all personal travel stays, and short-term rentals also represented another huge percent. And we've seen these numbers just keep trending up. And it's a result of people traveling to visit family and their friends, and just family travel in general. We know one thing for sure: families want to get out of the house, and they want and need a change of scenery. And those with young children, we can attest to that. And their needs have to be met, right? They're a little bit more unique, right? Safety for everyone is obviously at the core. But what about those rooms, right? They need multiple rooms for sleeping. So hotels, when it comes to marketing, let's start thinking about taking those executive suites and renaming them to the family suite, right? Let's talk about the great Wi-Fi, because that's needed for virtual schooling and for work. What are the available activities in and around the hotel? And also, how can families feel safe and know that they can be properly distant or isolate from other guests if desired? We also see some savvy hotel companies like Choice and also Luxury Retreats, among others, that are building new data-driven marketing models to geo-target content at regional levels. And it's allowing them to prioritize the right message to the right audience. So there's a real opportunity to use that same strategy to speak directly to families showing intent to travel. And the industry should be developing more and better options for modern families, because that's where a whole lot of money is right now. There's also a huge opportunity around the future of remote. This is one of the most interesting trends that we've been observing in this very strange year. And it's that evolution that's happening in all three big areas of our lives. The evolution involves a convergence of the future of work, the future of living, and the future of travel. So whatever this trend will look like, what will start to happen when the world reopens, it's probably one of the most fascinating changes that we're tracking at Skift. The New York Times published a story earlier this fall, which was analyzing what changed as many of us are no longer going into offices to work. In fact, Skift, we are now a globally distributed company. We gave up all of our offices all over the world, and this is our future, like many of you. And back to the story, they quoted the CEO from Tata, which is, as I'm sure you know them, one of the biggest companies in India and honestly in the world. And this executive said that during 2020, the company has closed billions of dollars in businesses, you got it, over Zoom video conferences, billions of dollars in business deals over Zoom video conferences. So to hear a CEO from a giant company say that Zoom is the way that they close their deals, this is big, right? So our prediction is that a fairly large number of business travel will probably start to fade away. Many of the travel managers that we talk to also are predicting a decrease, at least 10 to 15%. So that's easy to assume that this is going to be bad news for our industry. After all, business travel has always been a very lucrative sector. But on the other hand, this shift is likely to open up new opportunities, and that's when we start to get very excited. One example is remote work, right? We already talked about the productivity impact, but we also think that remote work opens up new opportunities for destinations and suppliers. We're already starting to see hotels and airlines offering new co-working and remote work products, and many are now, like we're seeing hotels and such, starting to add subscription products that are aimed at the digital nomad. We also think that remote companies will create new travel opportunities for their teams to get together for bonding and collaboration. This word that has sort of creeped up over the last month is corpcation. And in an era of remote work, we're going to see this rise in a type of incentive travel where corporations are take their remote and in-office workforces on massive team building holidays as an exercise in corporate culture and cohesion. Even before the pandemic, Skift had already been doing this. Every year, we take our team, the entire company, and we go on one of the retreats, and it's fantastic. Sadly, this year, we will not be doing that. Another positive evolution is with visa regulations. We're now seeing some countries like Bahamas and the Cayman Islands offer travelers a new type of remote work visas. Let's hear from Glenn Jones, who spoke about it. He is the interim CEO of Bermuda, and let's hear what he has to say about what they're doing there.
One of the most innovative things I've covered in this time is Bermuda's digital nomad initiative. Let's say it's not a visa, it's a permit.
We're seeing a large share of the total applicant pool be people who are pretty senior in their business in their business organization. So people at the C-suite level and managing directors. And so that's been really rewarding for us because as those people come to Bermuda, they have a significant impact on the economy generally and on the tourism economy in particular, because they'll have spending behaviors that are part resident and part tourist. So that's been really rewarding for us in terms of trying to get the tourism recovery going.
I mean, seriously, who would not want to work from paradise? When Glenn was speaking at our conference, I automatically went right online and checked out what the visa program was all about. And then just think about the taxes, right? So good to think about. and interesting to see the type of visas that are going to pop up and allow travelers to live and work for longer in destinations. And that's great for destination too. You know, Skift does a lot of work with Destination Canada, who in turn has great impact on helping local communities and shaping the future. So there's a real opportunity to shape Canada's future, to continue to attract talent and future business digital nomads through these types of programs. So that's something I'm sure you're already thinking about. Okay, let's help the little guys. This next area that we want to look at is the impact of 2020 on tour operators, right? Think about group tours, for example, right? Right now, we hear a lot of stories about the problems facing the airline industry or hotels. But this has also been super devastating year for local tour operators, which is a pity because there's so many deep connections to small businesses in various destinations and economies around the world. We've seen estimates of huge impact that 2020 is having on small businesses, not just here in the US, Canada as well. Hundreds of thousands have already closed their doors. And without new government support or a rapid return of customers, this trend is likely to continue over the next few months. So we think if there is one action those of us in our industry can take this year and next year as well, it's to help this industry recover. It's critical to support and raise the voices of these local tourism operators on the global stage and on the national stage of our destinations. I think we do a disservice to our industry if we don't try to raise awareness and lend a helping hand, something we can do by offering marketing support or financial assistance. I mean, I know in Canada, you have the travel tax credits from government that actually encourage Canadians to vacation here at home, right? In fact, by Canadians spending holidays locally and getting the snowbirds to stay within Canada, Canada alone could recoup the losses by just getting the domestic market to spend their vacation dollars at home. So that's huge. And the last thought I want to leave you with is around consumer confidence. We've got to instill confidence in order to get travelers out in the world again. In particular, we had a presentation by Andrew Watterson, the EVP and Chief Commercial Officer at Southwest Airlines. And he shared a really interesting stat at this year's Skip Global Forum. He said that the airline had done research and found that consumers' intent to travel goes from 50% to 80% if they traveled just once, even locally. It's a mind-blowing insight if you think about it, right? We're putting so much emphasis on finding a vaccine to solve our current crisis, but we don't necessarily think that that's it, the end-all be-all. It's not the only path forward. What we think will be most important factor in recovery will be the changes in consumer sentiment toward travel. And we don't think governments or those in the industry truly appreciate the importance of this behavior shift. That's why helping travelers to overcome the initial fear will be critical to our recovery. In many ways, it's going to involve a bit of performance from us in the industry. In other words, demonstrating our cleanliness and our health and safety procedures in a highly visible way, right? For example, hygiene theater that Arnie talked about. But if those changes result in more travel confidence over the long run, I think our recovery will ultimately be in better shape because of it. So let's hear from Andrew. He, again, was talking at our conference, and he was talking about the importance of taking that first trip.
The customers told us it was about clean surfaces, clean air, and appropriate distancing. So we were able to modify our current customer experience to accommodate that. And then for peace of mind, it was about the open middle seats, which is not a safety attribute, but more makes people more comfortable to travel. And they realize that eventually that goes away, but it kind of helps them get off the couch for that first trip. Because once they travel, the intent to travel really skyrockets. You know, people are almost 50-50 whether they're comfortable to travel right now. But once they experience at least our Southwest Promise and traveling with us, it goes up to 86 plus. And so really, once people understand it and experience it, they have a much different view. Their fears are allayed, and it really comes down.
So it's taking that first trip, and I'm taking my first trip next week. Not going that far, but at least it's a step in the right direction. So as all of you listening today, we hope that these insights can serve as a jumping off point and an inspiration for how you think about the tourism business around the world and in Canada moving forward. So with that, I want to thank you for your time. I wish you a very successful conference. And if you want to access more Skift content, please check out our Skift Pro and our Skift Research memberships, or feel free to contact me with any questions. I'm at ck@skift.com. My contact information is included on this slide. So thank you, TIAC, and thank you 2031 for sponsoring this session, and safe travels, everyone.